With all the hoopla about iPhones, Galaxies, Pixels, and other devices, it can be easy to forget that companies like Asus still offer phones that give you a taste of the high life, but at a more reasonable price. The Asus Zenfone 5Q is a mid to upper mid-range device where so many manufacturers seem to be aiming. Competition is stiff around the $300 price point where you'll find the Zenfone 5Q. But Asus hopes to pull out a win with high megapixel dual cameras in the front and back, a sleek glass back, and Asus's typically fast Zen UI performance. We've seen solid attempts from Asus in the past, but often with one or two glaring flaws that held us back from fully embracing the Zenfone lineup. Does the Asus Zenfone 5Q finally overcome this and prove itself to be a worthy competitor in its price range?
The Zenfone 5Q takes on a rather familiar styling, especially as it relates to the previous Zenfones. Being the only Zenfone 5 to not feature a notched display, bezels are minimal on the sides, but the top and bottom have a pronounced forehead and chin. Within the forehead lies a 20 megapixel regular camera, paired with an 8 megapixel wide-angle shooter and flash. We suppose that would be hard, or simply not worthwhile, to attempt to fit into a notch. The power and volume buttons built into the plastic sides also have a nice solid click to them, not too firm and not at all mushy. The glass back looks nice, albeit familiar and plain. But we do like the color selection, specifically the addition of a red colorway to spice things up. Notched or not, this 6-inch Full HD 2160 by 1080 display still achieves a respectable 80% screen to body ratio. Clarity on the screen is pretty good, as are the colors, though it can tint a bit bluish. Reaching a maximum brightness of 478 nits and a minimum of 6, it'll be easy to see this display in any lighting scenario. Asus's Zen UI has undergone a series of small but effective refinements over the past few years. A nip here and a tuck there has left Zen UI looking more cohesive and less confusing than it's ever looked in this Android 8.0 based iteration. Aesthetically, we're fans of this increasingly uniform UI and appreciate the level of tweaking still provided. Tools to clean up cached files, theme your interface, manage your files, and lock certain apps are well integrated and bloat is kept to a bare minimum. Adding a better all-device search functionality could certainly help to organize them further, making features more accessible and therefore more likely to be used. Being a mid-range device doesn't have to mean being slow, and the Zenfone 5Q is a good example of that. Asus pairs Qualcomm's Snapdragon 630 with 4GB of RAM to keep things running smoothly, and smooth it is. Navigating through your day-to-day tasks for work or for pleasure won't often leave you frustrated. We encountered no hangs, quick app launching, and brisk app switching throughout. Gaming will drop some frames and load slower than higher-end phones, but the experience overall is more than tenable. The Zenfone 5Q is a dual SIM device which expands the dual SIM tray to fit a microSD card in addition to the two SIM cards. That's pretty cool, but otherwise you'll find the proper requisites like dual band Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.2, and NFC. Pretty much par for the course at this price point. Being an unlocked phone, you won't be able to put this on Verizon Wireless or Sprint, but AT&T, T-Mobile, and prepaid companies who use their towers should have no issues hooking up the 5Q. Asus stacked the cameras pretty tall on this order, pairing 8 megapixel wide-angle lens cameras with a 16 megapixel regular shooter in the back and a 20 megapixel regular camera up front. The Zenfone 5Q seemingly has a camera for every situation. Thankfully, image quality stacks up exceptionally well to match this tall order. Pictures on the Zenfone 5Q come out very accurately colored and well detailed. Objects towards the edge of the frame can sometimes come out slightly blurred, but overall the Zenfone 5Q does a commendable job in focusing shots. Exposure is also very good, usually striking a happy balance between the light and dark areas of dynamic scenery, though brighter areas can sometimes get a little blown out. Lower light dynamic sceneries present the 5Q with a bit of trouble in taking in enough light for the darker areas, but highlights in these scenarios remain well tamed. Flipping on the HDR mode seems to rectify these small annoyances with exposure pretty much entirely, and thankfully it doesn't add much time to the shot either. The secondary 8 megapixel wide-angle lens does a lot of the same things right that the main sensor does in terms of color accuracy and detail capture, but it unfortunately lacks the main sensor's adeptness in exposure and higher proclivity in mitigating movement, which leaves the wide-angle lens more vulnerable to blowing out highlights and capturing blurry shots if you're not careful. Taking selfies on the 20 megapixel front-facing camera shows off much of the same strong attributes seen in the main sensor, albeit with a slightly warmer tone to the images it captures. This aside, colors are decently represented and details are sharp. The additional 8 megapixel snapper is meant for wide-angle photography just as it is in the back. Overall, the Zenfone 5Q easily pulls off one of the best photo capturing experiences in its field. 4K video taken on the device is unsurprisingly well detailed. Colors aren't quite as accurate as an image capture though, displaying a tendency to punch things up a bit. Electronic image stabilization helps keep things steady, but not enough to keep movements from becoming too shaky and jarring most of the time. Exposure is good though, as are focusing times, but audio came out sounding rather compressed, which is a shame to match such sharp video with subpar audio. Calls come through nicely on the Zenfone 5Q. We didn't have any issues with signal or reception. The earpiece is plenty loud and the speakerphone is adequate for most situations. Watching videos or listening to music won't blow you away on this speaker. Packing a 3300 mAh battery, the 5Q does very well with its battery efficiency. Well enough to last through a full day's use in our time with the device. Clocking respectable 10 hours on our custom drain test, we found the 5Q's battery life to be quite amenable. Recharge times are quick too, taking just under 90 minutes to charge from 0 to 100.
The Zenfone 5Q turns out to be a pretty solid performer. Asus's push for capable photography continues to impress us with its results, and efficiency in the OS has yielded better battery life, something that the Zenphones have shown a distinct need for in the past. Selling for $300, the Zenfone 5Q does have some potentially better known competitors, most notably the Nokia 6.1 and Moto G6. The 5Q seems to best both of these in most categories, especially photography, though the Nokia 6.1 might be the best matchup in that area. We still give the slight edge to the Zenfone 5Q for a much faster shutter speed and better usability overall. For now, we're pretty comfortable in saying that the Zenfone 5Q is one of the best phones that you can buy for $300. I'm Corey Gaskin with PhoneArena. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out PhoneArena.com for more info on all of these devices.